The couch knew every curve of my back. 3 weeks of restless nights had pressed my spine into its cushions until even the springs seemed to sigh beneath me. I'd buried my face deeper into the fabric, breathing in the strange mix of my son's aftershave and my daughter-in-law's vanilla candles, scent that had become the smell of my exile. My name is Linda Rowe. I'm 62 years old, recently divorced after a 30-year marriage, and I currently live on the fold-out in my son's apartment. Correction, my son Derek and his wife Brittany's apartment. Through the paper-thin walls, I could hear them whispering in their bedroom. Their voices always dropped when they thought I was asleep. I wasn't. They talked about me like I was a puzzle to solve, or worse, a burden to be managed. I never imagined my life would end up like this. Everything I owned was crammed into 2 suitcases tucked behind the entertainment center. The divorce papers were still warm when Derek offered me a temporary place to stay. Those were his exact words. Temporary, as if the collapse of my entire life was just a blip in the family calendar. As if I would magically get it together by the holidays. Brittany didn't say much to me, but she didn't have to. Her rules spoke louder than words. No using the good towels, no cooking anything that smelled, no shoes on the hardwood, no touching the coffee maker, her mother's wedding gift. Instead, I used the microwave to heat water and stirred in instant granules like I was back in college. Every morning at exactly 6:15, I heard Derek's alarm go off. 5 minutes later, the shower. Then it was Brittany's turn, complete with her half-hour beauty routine that left the entire bathroom fogged with luxury moisturizer. By the time I got in, no hot water left, ever. Small things, but they added up like raindrops in a leaky basement. That morning, Derek stepped into the kitchen, suit pressed, tie straight, coffee mug in hand. "Mom, you're up early." "I couldn't sleep," I said, my voice as neutral as my instant coffee. He fiddled with his tie. "Brittany and we think maybe it's time you start thinking about a more permanent solution." Permanent? My heart dropped, but I smiled. Of course. How silly of me to think I could stay until I found my footing. I was a mother once. Now I was just a guest with an expiration date. The word permanent hung in the air like a cold draft. I set my mug down with a little more force than necessary. Derek didn't flinch. He was used to me being quiet. He wasn't prepared for me to speak up. "Yesterday," I said, "you drove Brittany's mother to tour that fancy new apartment building on Parkside Avenue. The one with the granite countertops and an unit laundry." His Adam's apple bobbed. "That's different. Barbara has specific needs. She has a perfectly good house she doesn't want to sell," I said, keeping my tone even. "My specific need is a bed. One night in a real bed." That's when Brittany walked in, already dressed for work in one of her sleek black dresses. Her blonde hair was twisted into a tight bun. She didn't look at me as she pulled ingredients from the fridge for her daily kale smoothie. "Morning, Linda," she said flatly. She always called me Linda. Never Mom, not even once. "Good morning, dear," I replied, casting a smile on my face. "Derek was just telling me about your mother's new place." "It sounds lovely." Brittany paused, her hand hovering over the blender. "Mother needed a change of scenery. The house was too big after Dad passed. 3 bedrooms does sound enormous for one person," I said, glancing meaningfully around their 2-bedroom apartment where I'd been sleeping, on a couch in the living room for nearly a month. Derek cleared his throat. "Mom, about the baby's room. What about it?" "The nursery," he said. "We've started clearing it out. Brittany's been stressing about getting it set up. You know how important it is to get everything ready. I'm not asking to live in there permanently, Derek. Just a few nights, a real bed, just until I find a place." Brittany finally looked at me, her green eyes sharp. "Linda, this isn't about beds. It's about boundaries. What's appropriate?" I blinked. Appropriate. I repeated slowly, You mean what's appropriate for a woman whose husband of 30 years left her for someone younger? Or what's appropriate for a mother who raised her son to become the kind of man who tells her she's a burden? You're not homeless, Derek said quickly. Dad offered you the condo in Florida. Yes, I said, my voice tightening. He offered me a one-bedroom condo 2,000 miles away on the condition I sign away my rights to half our assets. Very generous. Brittany hit the blender. The noise drowned out everything, including Derek's excuses. When it stopped, I looked at them both. If I wanted comfort, I said softly, I should stay married to your father. Isn't that what you said? Neither of them answered, but the silence told me enough. That night, I walked to the corner market 3 blocks away. I didn't go out often, not because I wasn't allowed, but because I'd started to feel like a ghost slipping through other people's lives. But we were out of milk, and I needed 5 minutes to feel like a human being. Mr. Patel, the store owner, greeted me by name. Evening, Mrs. Rowe, you look tired. Just hungry, I said with a tired smile. I picked up a small container of yogurt, a can of soup, and a sleeve of crackers. Everything I bought was single-serve, nothing that took up too much space in their fridge. As I waited at the register, something caught my eye. A bright red Powerball sign flashing $3 million. $3 million. More money than I'd seen in my entire life. You feeling lucky tonight? Mr. Patel asked, nodding toward the display. I hesitated, then looked down at the crumpled $10 bill in my hand. It was supposed to be for gas money or tomorrow's groceries, but something in me whispered, try. One quick pick, I said. The machine whirred, and a slip of paper popped out. 111924374 2 Powerball 8. I folded it carefully and slipped it into my wallet. I didn't expect anything. Whoever does. Back at the apartment, Derek and Brittany were gone, out to dinner at her mum's new place. Of course they were. I heated my soup in the microwave and ate from a mug. The news was on, muted. Background noise. I didn't even glance up until the winning numbers flashed across the screen. 111924374 Powerball 8. I stared at the screen, then slowly pulled the ticket from my wallet. I checked once, then twice, then a third time. My hands trembling. Every number matched. I wasn't hallucinating. I was holding a winning ticket worth $3 million. I sank back into the couch that knew my spine too well. After taxes, it would be around $1.8 million. Enough to buy a house. Enough to never sleep on someone else's sofa again. Enough to finally look my son in the eye and say, you don't get to decide my worth. But that night, I didn't speak a word. I just sat in the dark staring at that piece of paper, and the only thing echoing in my mind was, if you wanted comfort, you should have stayed married to your father. The next morning, I awoke before the alarm. The lottery ticket lay on the coffee table like a quiet revolution, tucked between my expired credit card and the marriage certificate that no longer meant anything. Both useless in their own way until now. Derek's alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. I heard the familiar thud of his feet hitting the floor, the creak of the bathroom door, the running water. I didn't move, not yet. I needed to stay invisible for just one more day. He passed me in the living room like I was furniture. No good morning, no glance. Just the rustle of his suit and the scent of his cologne fading down the hallway. Brittany followed shortly after, her perfume lingering longer than her words. When they finally left, I stood up, stretched out the stiffness in my back, and picked up the ticket. It was still real. At 9 a.m., I called the lottery office. Mrs. Rowe, the woman on the phone, said, her voice cheerful but rehearsed, congratulations. We'll need you to come in person to begin the claim process. What should I bring? Photo ID, social security card, and the winning ticket. Sign the back immediately. Store it somewhere safe. You'll also need to decide between a lump sum or annuity. Lump sum, I said, without hesitation. I don't have 30 years to wait. That afternoon, I stepped into a downtown government building where dreams and audits coexist under fluorescent lights. The claim process was quiet, clinical, even surreal. A man named Kevin walked me through the paperwork. After taxes, your payout comes to approximately $1.8 million, he said, sliding a calculator toward me. We can process your deposit within 5 business days. I signed every page with a steady hand. Before I left, I handed Kevin a freshly printed business card with my name and the words L. Rowe Consulting Group. Confidential, please, I said. At least for now. Understood, he replied. I walked out into the sunlight, still wearing my thrift store coat and borrowed shoes. Nothing about me looked different, but everything had changed. I didn't go home. Instead, I went to the public library. I spent the rest of the day researching real estate, zoning laws, land values. By nightfall, I'd found it. A 40-acre property with a worn-down farmhouse, a barn, and a modest caretaker's cottage. Remote, quiet, perfect. And for the first time in months, I didn't dread falling asleep because I knew exactly what I was going to do next. 3 weeks later, I owned it. The farmhouse, the land, the barn with a leaky roof, the tiny caretaker's cottage with faded curtains and warped floorboards, all of it mine. I'd paid in full, in cash. No mortgage, no questions. The real estate agent barely blinked when I said I didn't need an inspection. I've lived with worse, I told her, and I had. I hired local contractors to fix the essentials. Plumbing, fencing, electricity. I moved in with only the things that mattered. My books, my tools, and the quiet kind of peace that comes after reclaiming your life. I also brought in animals. It started with 3 horses, rescued from a bankrupt riding stable. Then 2 goats. Then a stream of dogs and cats from the county shelter. People asked why. I just said because they deserve better. I hired Angela, a 23-year-old vet student from the community college who needed housing and experience. I gave her the small bedroom in the cottage, a stipend, and something more important, a fresh start. 6 weeks passed. Not a single call from Derek. Then, on a Sunday afternoon, a silver sedan crunched up my gravel drive. I was brushing down one of the horses, Thunder, a big black gelding, who used to flinch at every touch. He didn't flinch now. "Mom," Derek's voice cut through the stillness. I didn't turn around. Thunder leaned into the brush, calm as ever. "I know you can hear me," he said, his tone uncertain, thinner than I remembered. I looked up slowly. There he was. Creased slacks, wrinkled dress shirt, no tie, hair a little too long, eyes a little too tired. He looked smaller than I remembered. "Hello, Derek," I said. He stepped closer. We've been looking for you." I asked, even though I already knew. That's when Brittany stepped out from the passenger side of the car. 7 months pregnant, her skin pale, her steps hesitant. She didn't look polished anymore. She looked real. "We lost the apartment," Derek said, his voice flat. "I lost my job. The bank called our loan. We have nowhere else to go." I didn't blink. "We thought maybe, ... double quotes," he trailed off. "Because I'm family?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Despite everything, you're still my mother." I stared at the woman who used to call me Linda like it was a punishment. The man who used to pretend I wasn't there while sipping coffee I couldn't touch. "Think of your grandson," Brittany added softly, her hand resting on her belly. I did think of him. I thought about the child who would grow up watching how his parents treated the vulnerable. The lessons he would absorb about love, humility, and consequences. I turned toward the cottage, the old helper's quarters, freshly cleaned and just vacated by Angela, who'd happily moved into the main house. Then I turned back. "Angela," I called, seeing her on the porch. Could you show our guests to their accommodations? Derek blinked. You mean the cottage? Of course, I said with a soft smile. It's temporary, of course. For now, the cottage wasn't glamorous. It had no granite countertops, no walk-in closets, no polished chrome fixtures. The living room barely fit their oversized leather sectional. The kitchen appliances hummed like they were older than Brittany's entire skincare routine. But it was clean, safe, warm, and it had rules. We wake at 5, I told them, standing just inside the front door as they dropped boxes with shaky hands. The horses don't care if you had a rough night. Brittany looked shocked. I am 7 months pregnant. Then Derek will work twice as hard to cover for you. I gestured toward the barn where Angela had already written out a schedule on a clipboard. Feeding, stall cleaning, water checks, fence inspections, farm work in all its honest simplicity. No loud music, no alcohol, no guests without asking. Everyone pulls their weight. No exceptions. Derek looked around the small space, trying to hide the disbelief on his face. This is temporary, he muttered. Just until I find another job. Of course, I said, smiling. We all start somewhere. Later that evening, Angela joined me on the porch of the main house. We sipped wine, watching as Derek and Brittany struggled to unload the last of their furniture. She nudged me, she said with a grin. This is better than reality TV. I chuckled. Brittany tried to fit her king-size bed in that tiny second bedroom. Angela laughed. It doesn't even fit through the door. Perfect, I said. Maybe they'll learn to sleep closer together. Might help. Through the cottage window, I could see them measuring walls and muttering. Their world, once curated and pristine, was crumbling beneath mismatched sheets and a coffee maker from the thrift store. Angela turned serious. Why are you doing this? You could have just said no. I looked out across the fields where thunder grazed peacefully under the setting sun. Because, I said quietly, sometimes the only way people learn the value of comfort is by living without it. Angela nodded slowly. She understood. Life had taught her hard lessons too. I'm not here to punish them, I added, but I am here to make sure they understand the cost of casual cruelty. Angela raised her glass to justice. I clinked mine against hers, to justice and good boundaries. From inside the cottage, I heard Brittany sigh loudly. She'd just discovered the cottage had no dishwasher. Lesson 1. Start with your hands. 1 month passed, then 2. The work was hard, the mornings cold, the cottage cramped, but they stayed. Derek mucked stalls in the rain without complaint. Brittany, though heavily pregnant, asked if she could help with the farm's bookkeeping. She found receipts I hadn't filed properly, balanced budgets I hadn't touched since moving in. She didn't say much, but the way she worked said enough. Then one morning, Angela handed me her phone. You might want to see this, she said with a smirk. On the screen was a LinkedIn post. Derek exploring new opportunities, open to conversations. Corporate speak for, I've been fired. I nodded, unsurprised. He's finally out of safety nets. A week later, Angela saw him at the hardware store downtown, asking questions about the rescue. Said he was your son. Seemed stressed. I told him I didn't know Alinda Rowe. I grinned. Smart girl. Then one quiet afternoon, there was a knock at my door. It was Brittany. Her ponytail was frizzed, her blouse wrinkled. She held a manila folder like it was made of glass. Can we talk? She asked. I gestured to the kitchen table. She sat across from me, laying out receipts, spreadsheets, even typed out notes. I've been tracking the rescue's numbers, she said. What you've built here, it's working, but it could grow. There are grants we could apply for, fundraisers we haven't tried. I studied her face. This wasn't manipulation. It was effort. Real, focused effort. You did this? I asked. She nodded. For you, for the animals, for the baby. I scanned the documents. She'd found cost-saving opportunities I missed, revenue streams I hadn't considered, and most importantly, she believed in it. "I know why we're here," she said quietly. "I know what we did, and I know we deserved this." She opened a final document, a lease agreement. "We want to stay in the cottage formally, as tenants, as employees, not as family, with our hands out." I leaned back. "Why?" "Because you gave us more than shelter. You gave us the chance to become people we could respect, people our son could be proud of." I looked at her, really looked. The woman who once saw me as dead weight now looked like someone ready to carry her own. "There's something else," she added, hesitating. "Derek, he talks to the baby about you. Every night tells him stories about how strong you are, about how much you gave up." My throat tightened. "He's never said it to your face," Brittany whispered. "But he knows what he did, and he regrets it." Angela stood quietly. "I'll give you two some space." Brittany reached across the table. Her hand touched mine, tentative but steady. "I can't undo what we did," she said. "But if you'll let us, we'll spend the rest of our lives earning your trust back." I looked down at our joined hands. One worn from decades of unseen labor, one softened by discomfort turned humility. "The cottage is yours," I said. "Not as a gift, but as what you've earned." 6 months after I'd slept on their couch, I stood in my own kitchen, wrapped in the warmth of real coffee and morning light. The rescue was thriving. 67 animals had come through our gates. Most found homes. A few stayed. All of them healed slowly, messily, beautifully. Outside, I watched Derek load hay bales onto the truck. His movements were different, now measured, grounded. Gone was the executive, with soft hands and quick excuses. In his place was a man who understood labor, who looked animals in the eye and didn't flinch, who respected the things he couldn't control. Angela stepped into the kitchen, cradling baby Caleb against her chest. "At it early today," she said, nodding to Derek. "He always is now," I said. "He's afraid to fall behind, afraid to lose what he's earned," she corrected gently. I nodded. Caleb gurgled. His dark hair had grown in thick, his eyes bright. He was a beautiful child, serene, observant, unaware of the lessons his parents were still learning. Angela rocked him slightly. "Brittany said she wants to take on more responsibility, maybe apply for some grants. She's been asking about expansion. She's good with numbers," I admitted. "And more careful with people," Angela added. We stood in silence for a moment, watching the fields turn golden with the rising sun. Then a knock. Brittany stood at the back door, holding a folder and something else. Nervous hope. I let her in. She handed me more papers, detailed plans for the next phase of the rescue, grant proposals, volunteer program structures, even a partnership outline with the local school. "I know we still have a lot to prove," she said, "but this place matters, and we want to help it grow." I flipped through the pages. Every line was clear, thoughtful, earned. "There's something else," she added, hesitating. "Derek, he's been waiting to talk to you. He wants to apologize for everything. He just didn't know how." I looked out the window. He was walking toward the barn, his shirt damp with sweat. He paused, glanced toward the house, and raised his hand in a tentative wave. I didn't wave back, but I didn't look away. "Tell him this," I said quietly. "Tell him apologies are nice, but I'm more interested in the man he is becoming than the man he used to be." Brittany smiled, eyes shimmering. "He'll understand." I believed her because justice doesn't always come with courtroom scenes or grand gestures. Sometimes it arrives quietly through long days, early mornings, calloused hands, and hard-won respect. They had treated me like a burden, but now they worked for me. Not out of spite, out of growth, out of humility, and maybe one day out of love that was real, not just inherited. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is a simple truth lived out loud. You don't have to raise your voice to reclaim your worth. You just have to stop apologizing for existing and start building a life so full, so whole, that even those who discarded you can't look away.